Ever since their debut in 2003, Ducati have left a mark on MotoGP and have been one of the standout manufacturers to compete in the series. Early on in their Grand Prix tenure, the team sported flagship names like Troy Bayliss and Loris Capirossi, but the man that would take them to their highest highs in MotoGP would be none other than Casey Stoner, with the Australian doing his best Kimi Raikkonen impression by joining the Italian-based outfit in 2007 and winning the title in his first season with them. With their first championship in the bag, the only logical way forward for Ducati would be to build off of this feat by repeating it as soon as next year. However, what took place after that was a Riders' Championship drought that lasted 15 years, all the way until 2022, and within that 15-year drought, the team went through many different riders, many different enemies, and many different eras, all of which would lead to them finally getting back on top of the MotoGP World Championship. It was an Everest-level climb, so strap yourself in, because that climb was by no means an easy one. Ducati may have been sporting red, but they needed that red mist to descend on them once again to fight for a title. Here's the story of how they got that red mist back. My name is Intern, I talk wheel, and this is The Red Mist, how Ducati got back on top. The year is 2008 and Casey Stoner pulls up to the starting grid for the season opener in Qatar with a bright red Ducati and a big Australian flag schemed number 1 on the front of it. This is because Stoner entered the season as the defending world champion after capturing his first MotoGP championship last season, after not just 1 year with Ducati, but 2 years in the top class in general. He won the championship in dominant fashion over runner-up Dani Pedrosa by over 100 points, with Stoner winning 10 of the 18 races that year. It was Ducati's first championship, and the first non-Japanese manufacturer to win the championship since 1974. With Stoner and Ducati striking gold early in their relationship, the only way to go was forward and repeat the feat, and his title defense got off to the greatest possible start, with him winning the season opener in Qatar. Unfortunately, Stoner's season was marred with inconsistency and unprovoked errors that saw the 2008 championship go to Valentino Rossi, with Stoner being the runner-up. Rossi finished all but 2 races that season on the podium, while Stoner finished 7 races off the podium, 2 of which saw him crash out from the lead out of nowhere in back-to-back rounds in the Czech Republic and San Marino. He also lost to Rossi in a barn burner classic around Laguna Seca, in a battle that is still talked about to this day. The title loss was a wake-up call for both the team and the rider, as Rossi proved to be a force that you'd have to be at your best to defeat. 2009 would be attempt 2. Ducati made off-season changes to their lineup after Stoner's teammate Marco Melandri had a train wreck season, finishing a lowly P17 in the 2008 championship. Ducati aimed high, signing 2006 world champion Nicky Hayden to partner Casey for that season. Stoner would once again kick off the season with victory in the season opener in Qatar. However, this season would be completely written off, as Stoner would suffer health issues throughout the season. He experienced extreme fatigue in races, and says at times he was out of energy by as early as lap 3. He was originally diagnosed with anemia, a diagnosis he would dispute, and eventually had to miss 3 races from the season to recover from this illness. Stoner would return fresh as a daisy, proving it with victories in Australia and Malaysia, and said he no longer experienced the same tiredness as earlier, but by then, the season was a write-off, and he'd only managed P4 in the championship, as Rossi would win his 9th championship. 2008 was lost as Stoner's mind got the better of him. 2009 was lost as Stoner's body got the better of him, but 2010 would be the year that Stoner's bike got the better of him. Casey was not meshing well with the Ducati the way he used to. He lost the front end on the bike a lot of times, and his frustration with the bike soon grew into frustration with the team. He only scored 3 Grand Prix wins that year, the first of which was scored 13 races into the season in Aragon. He would finish P4 in the championship that year, another season of no championship. Stoner felt as though the team had turned their backs on him and didn't support him the way they used to. And when you combine the disappointment of not winning a title in 3 years with his inability to find the sweet spot on the bike, you get Stoner's departure from the team to join Repsol Honda in 2011 and the end of Chapter 1. With Stoner gone and Nicky Hayden not being able to show the same pace that won him his championship, Ducati needed a new top dog, and the rider they got wasn't just the top dog, he was the biggest face in the entire sport, the Doctor, Valentino Rossi. Valentino Rossi was the megastar whose name carried MotoGP for decades. His fan base, filled with die-hard supporters, flocked to races all over the world in neon yellow 46 draped merch to cheer on their hero, and he had the skills to warrant the fanfare. By 2010, Valentino Rossi was a 9-time world champion, and without question the most successful rider on the grid and of all time. After his championship in 2009, Rossi was shown up by Jorge Lorenzo in 2010 after breaking his leg, and with a battle for team supremacy brewing, he left Yamaha and came over to Ducati. He announced the deal in August 2010. With an Italian legend on Italian machinery, expectations were very high. It was now up to Ducati to build around Rossi and try and get back to the heights of the 2007 season. It was treated like a huge movement in the sport too, with cameramen flocking all over his garage to watch him test the GP11 for the first time at Valencia in the post-season test. The test went decently, but unfortunately for Vale, testing later in the off-season at Sepang did not bring favourable results to the team, as Rossi was over 1.5 seconds slower than Casey Stoner, who was still getting to grips with his new Repsol Honda. He cited not being able to create enough grip from the front tyre as his main issue with the Ducati. With the first round in 2011 in Qatar ready to go, VR46 fans were eager to see if the problems had been fixed and whether or not Vale could be a serious championship contender in this new chapter of his career. He would finish P7 on the Ducati in his debut, 16 seconds off the win. The next round in Spain showed promising pace, as Rossi turned his P12 grid position into P3 on track. He unfortunately had a coming together with Casey Stoner that left Stoner out of the race and relegated Rossi to 5th. Stoner would then drop the famous line to Rossi after the race, saying, "Your ambition outweighed your talent." It wasn't all bad that day for Ducati though, as Rossi's teammate Nicky Hayden finished P3 and gave Ducati their first podium of the season, and this would end up being Hayden's last podium for the team in his Ducati tenure. Valentino would go on to string together some decent finishes, scoring top 6s in his next 7 races with the team and his first podium for them at Le Mans with a P3 finish. However, as it regarded fighting for a championship, Rossi was nowhere near close enough. The Le Mans podium would be his only podium he recorded that season, and the season didn't get any better for Rossi as he continued to get midfield results for the rest of the year, and was unfortunately involved in a crash at the 2011 Malaysian Grand Prix that claimed the life of his great friend Marco Simoncelli, a moment Rossi says was one of the worst of his life. He ended the season P7 in what was his first winless season of his career to date, while Casey Stoner won the World Championship on his first season with the Honda. With season 1 at Ducati over, an improvement was going to be needed if Rossi was ever going to challenge for a World Championship, and things didn't look any better, because this time in Qatar, Rossi only managed to score a P10 finish. He would again have his standout performance for Ducati in France, taking a P2 finish at Le Mans in wet conditions after an awesome battle with Casey Stoner. More mediocre results were to follow though, as Rossi only scored 3 top 5s for the remainder of that season, though his home crowd would get the best of those top 5s as he crossed the line P2 in Misano at his home race in San Marino. Rossi this time finished P8 in the championship, a spot worse than last year, and announced that year that he would be leaving the team and rejoining Yamaha for the 2013 season. What on paper seemed like a daring move that could have resulted in more had things clicked, ended up being one of the most disappointing eras of Rossi's career, as he just never meshed with the bike. With Rossi out though, Ducati would need a new number 1 guy, and to find him, they never even had to look far outside of Italy. In 2013, Ducati signed Andrea Dovizioso to partner Nicky Hayden in what was Hayden's last season with the team. Dovizioso had just finished a spell at Repsol Honda. He made his Grand Prix debut for the Scott Racing team in 2008 after a junior career that saw him win the 125cc championship and score 2 runner-ups and a 3rd place in 3 years of 250cc racing. He impressed in his rookie season, finishing just off the podium in P4 on his MotoGP debut, and he finished 5th in the championship that same year. It earned him a seat at Repsol Honda in 2009 up until he left in 2011, and he did a season at Tech 3 Yamaha before joining the Italian outfit. Dovizioso at first didn't look like he'd achieve much at Ducati, but with time and patience between himself and the team, they would go on to accomplish great things. His first season wasn't the best. P8 in the standings with no podiums wasn't the best way to start out, and it was very reminiscent of Valentino Rossi's start with the team. In 2014, he was partnered with his former Tech 3 teammate Cal Crutchlow. This season was a big step up for Dovi as he finished P5 in the championship after getting a podium at the Circuit of the Americas and scoring his first pole since 2010. 2015 was the year the Ducati finally showed signs of being competitive at the front again. After a disappointing year that saw him score 1 podium, Cal Crutchlow departed Ducati and he was replaced by Pramac rider Andrea Iannone. Ducati had 2 quick Italians on the bike and took a massive step up in pace, evident when Dovizioso took pole at the season opener in Qatar by putting 2 tenths on P2. The pace held up in the race too, as Dovi stayed in the fight for the win all race, eventually finishing P2 behind Valentino Rossi, and with Iannone in P3, the team got their first double podium since Aragon in 2010. Dovi would continue this hot streak with P2s in the next 2 rounds. However, reliability coupled with mistakes would see him only score 1 more podium for that season, and he'd finish a lowly P7 in the standings, while his new teammate Iannone beat him in P5 with less reliability woes. Dovi would kick off 2016 the same way he started 2015, a P2 in Qatar, this time to Jorge Lorenzo. He and Iannone crashed out of Argentina on the last lap when it seemed as though Dovi was on for a P2 finish. As the Ducati straight line speed became easily the best in the sport, the team were very competitive at that year's Austrian Grand Prix, and they scored a 1-2 finish with Iannone beating Dovi to the line. However, plans for 2017 were quickly revealed, as 3-time world champion Jorge Lorenzo announced that he'd be joining the team in 2017, with Iannone leaving Ducati to sign for Suzuki. Dovi would finish off the season in perfect style, scoring his first ever win for Ducati in a rain-soaked Malaysian Grand Prix and taking P5 in the championship. 2017 would be the breakout year for Andrea Dovizioso. This would be the year he would be seen as one of the best riders on the grid without question, as he and Ducati mounted a heroic title charge for the World Championship against 3-time and defending champion Marc Marquez. Dovizioso won 6 Grand Prix that season, including his home race in Mugello, the Austrian Grand Prix where he passed Marquez on the final corner, and Japan where he pulled off the exact same move to beat Marquez again. All this while Jorge Lorenzo struggled on the Ducati, only managing 3 podium finishes all season. The title would be decided in the final round in Valencia, with Dovizioso still mathematically in the running, but 21 points behind Marc Marquez. To win the title, he'd have to win the race with Marquez not scoring, and there would be much tension in the race as Ducati would instruct Jorge Lorenzo to let Dovizioso through to give him a better shot at the championship. This would fall on deaf ears as Lorenzo did no such thing. Things got even more intense as Marc Marquez ran very wide into turn 1 and almost crashed. However, Marquez would save the bike and carry on in P5. Team orders would not be needed for Ducati as Lorenzo would crash with 6 laps to go. However, it just wasn't meant to be for Dovi, as he too would crash the very next lap, and Marquez would cruise to win title number 4 as Dovi finished runner-up in the championship for the very first time in his career. Dovi would kick off 2018 by finally winning the Qatar Grand Prix after 3 straight second place finishes at the track, and he did so the same way he won Japan and the same way he won Austria, by passing Marquez on the final corner on the final lap and snatching the win at the last second. Unfortunately, this year Marquez on Honda would take a step up and Ducati and Dovi would have no answer. Marc Marquez won the 2018 championship by almost 100 points over Dovizioso, as he himself only managed to win 4 Grand Prix. Jorge Lorenzo would also improve on the Ducati, winning 3 rounds that year at Mugello, Catalonia, and Austria, a track Ducati were undefeated at since its return in 2016. Marquez even pulled a Dovi on Dovi, passing him on the last corner to win the Thai Grand Prix on the final lap. Lorenzo would leave Ducati at the end of the season and join Repsol Honda, and Ducati would bring in Pramac ace Danilo Petrucci to partner Dovizioso for 2019. A striking new red livery for Ducati in 2019 glossed on the cameras as Dovizioso crossed the line to win Qatar for the 2nd year in a row, once again passing Marc Marquez on the final corner. This was one of the few peaks of Ducati's season, as Marquez put down arguably his greatest season of all time, winning the championship and finishing all but one race in 1st or 2nd. Dovi's only other win of that season came at Austria, where Ducati scored their 4th win in a row at the track, with Dovi once again passing Marc Marquez to win on the final lap. This was the 4th different time in 3 years that Dovi had pulled off this move on Marquez. He would go on to finish that season P2 in the championship for the 3rd straight year. The relationship between Ducati and Dovi would become strained in 2020, however. There was much talk about team boss Gigi Dall'Igna being unwilling to give him a contract extension. The Dovizioso era at Ducati officially came to an end when Dovi announced at Austria that he'd be leaving the team after 2020, before scoring his 14th and final win for them that same weekend. It was also Ducati's 50th win in MotoGP, an ironic end to a partnership that saw 3 runner-up finishes in the championship, and saw a resurgence that wasn't just on-track performance, but team morale, which unfortunately came to a rather bitter end. Ducati sported a brand new lineup in 2021, with veteran Jack Miller and 2nd-year rider Francesco Bagnaia stepping up to the main team after impressing the factory with their finishes on the Pramac Ducati the year prior. Both men would find success with the team, with Miller winning twice in Jerez and in a wet Le Mans, and Bagnaia breaking out in the second half of the year, scoring 4 wins in the last 6 rounds and finishing runner-up in the championship in just his first season with the team. Francesco, nicknamed Pecco, stood out as the main guy to build around moving forward, as Ducati needed to find a way to stop Yamaha ace Fabio Quartararo, who had just won his first World Championship. He would clinch that championship in San Marino after Bagnaia crashed from the lead with just a few laps left. Come 2022, the championship would be decided between the 2 young riders, Pecco on the Ducati versus Fabio on the Yamaha. Yamaha had taken a step back in pace, while Ducati had been providing arguably one of the best bike packages on the grid for the past few seasons. Bagnaia's title charge got off to a humiliating start as he crashed out of the season opener in Qatar. He went on a podium drought that lasted all the way up until his first win of the season in Jerez. He would crash from the lead in Le Mans before bouncing back to win his home Grand Prix in Mugello. Back-to-back retirements in Catalonia, after being wiped out on lap 1, and Sachsenring, where he crashed out on his own, saw Pecco out of the top 5 in the championship. But what followed was one of the greatest comebacks in motorsport for quite some time. Bagnaia rode like a man that had the red mist descended on him. He racked up 4 straight victories from Assen all the way to Misano, and followed it up with a P2 finish in Aragon to put himself only 10 points behind Quartararo with 5 rounds remaining. He crashed out again in Japan, but Quartararo only managed P8 and would extend his lead over Pecco to only 18 points. Pecco would then score back-to-back 3rd place finishes, while Fabio had a nightmare Thai Grand Prix, finishing out of the points in P17 before crashing out of Australia and gifting a 14-point lead to Pecco with 2 rounds left in the championship. Pecco would stamp his authority in the title fight in Malaysia, winning the race from P9 on the grid while Quartararo could only manage P3. This meant that Fabio's only chance of winning the championship would be to win Valencia with Pecco out, the absolute same situation Dovizioso was in when he was going for the championship in 2017. Knowing a crash would cost him his maiden world championship, Pecco kept his head down and kept his nose clean, finishing the race in P9 while Quartararo could only muster up a P4 finish, meaning Pecco Bagnaia had won his first MotoGP World Championship in just his 4th season. Ducati had finally done it. They won the Riders' Championship for the first time in 15 years, finally getting rain after the drought that befell the team after Stoner won the 2007 title. There were many highs, there were many lows, there were many talented riders that came through the team, trying to be the one to bring glory to Ducati, and whether it was leaving the team after no success like Rossi, or staying committed and still coming up short like Andrea Dovizioso, Ducati found the one through good scouting and getting the right riders by finally hitting the nail on the head with Pecco Bagnaia, as the young driver would be the one to jump up to the main team and to once again bring glory to the franchise. And with more talents in the field like Bastianini, who won 4 races this year on an old spec Ducati, and Jorge Martin, who already has 9 poles in 2 years of MotoGP, it seems as though championships might start to become a thing of normality for the Italian squad. Both guys like Fabio out there looking for revenge, and guys like Marc Marquez trying to get back on top of the sport. Only time will tell if the red mist that descended over Ducati this season will keep up. My name is Intern, I talk wheel, and thanks for watching.